VikesNow, Dustin Baker, the September 6th edition, the day after Labor Day, a mere 5 days from Vikings regular season football. They take on the Packers at US Bank Stadium, a trial by fire for the new head coach. We'll get into a lot of Packers-Vikings stuff for the rest of the week. Tomorrow, Josh Fry is on for his Wednesday segment, and he's going to talk about storylines, and I'm sure I'll have something similar towards the latter part of the weeks. But I want to cover, just for the record, all of the guys that were part of the 2021 Vikings that have went elsewhere. So alphabetically, I'm going to go down the line and track where they have gone, what they're doing. A lot of them are free agents, which you'll soon find out. And then just kind of how they went elsewhere, why they're there, and why they're not here anymore. The first one is Mackenzie Alexander, a cornerback who was Pro Football Focus's worst cornerback in the United States. Last year, he started off okay, but then, my goodness, it didn't go well the rest of the 2021 campaign for Alexander. He spent the whole summer as a free agent, wound up with the Miami Dolphins about 3-4 weeks ago. Then he got hurt, and they released him. So he's at a career crossroads after a shitty year, but he's not crazy old. He should be back probably next year as a free agent on somebody's radar. So, Alexander, free agent, should have been with the Dolphins, got hurt. Anthony Barr, arguably the biggest name on this list because he played for the Vikings since 2014, the first pick of the Mike Zimmer era, for months. So it was kind of a foregone conclusion that he was leaving, right? On Instagram, he said goodbye to fans after the final regular season game. We knew, even though there was a lot of dead money he's getting paid, we knew that he wasn't long for this purple world. But I thought he would be a commodity in March when we were doing the free agent bonanza. Nope. Nobody ever plucked him. He marinated on the free agent wire for 5 months. The rumor the whole time was that he would land with the Cowboys, and that's exactly what he did. He signed a deal in Dallas, and now he will run with Micah Parsons and Leighton Vander Esch as the team's linebackers on a suddenly upstart Cowboys defense that was terrible 2 years ago. And then now it's a playmaking defense that goes for broke most of the time. Barr to the Cowboys. Chad Beebe is a free agent. He spent the summer with the Houston Texans, who, jot this down, have the worst wide receiving core in the NFL. And Beebe couldn't make that team. And now he, like Mackenzie Alexander, is a free agent. And who knows if he'll catch on elsewhere. If you can't latch on to the team with the worst wide receivers in the business, that ain't good. So Beebe, I'm not sure if this will be the end of the road for him. Perhaps he was just a Spielman Zimmer type of commodity, but he is a free agent. Also a free agent is Jordan Berry, the punter who was shockingly released, it feels like a long time ago, but about 2 weeks ago when the Vikings decided that Ryan Wright, a big hoss of a punter, was going to be their guy. Berry was the odd man out, and he remains a free agent. I thought he might sign on with Buffalo after their punt god did his stuff and big alleged legal trouble now. But nope, Berry remains a free agent. He was a decent punter last year. He wasn't otherworldly, but he doesn't work for the Vikings anymore because they have chosen the bulky Ryan Wright. Next, somebody who actually went to a team and who was going to start, Mason Cole. You'll recall last year during the lead up to the 2021 season that Rick Spielman traded for Cole as kind of a contingency plan or offensive, guard or center. Well, he did play a little bit, and when he did play, he was fabulous. So the Steelers took notice, and they signed Mason Cole in free agency. I think the Vikings gave a 6th rounder for him against the with the Cardinals a couple of years ago. But now he plays and will start, presumably, for the Steelers. The only caveat there is the Steelers have a terrible offensive line, and Mitchell Trubisky is their QB1, so I don't know how excited you could be about that whole prognosis in Pittsburgh. They'll find a way to be 9-8. They just don't have losing records under Mike Tomlin. But the takeaway for your sake is that Mason Cole, a reservist offensive lineman for Minnesota, now starts for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Tyler Conklin, another big one that fell off the Vikings map in March, which everybody kind of predicted, signed a 3-year, $20-point-something million deal, about $7 million per season. Expensive for a TE2, kinda. That's what he is right now, behind CJ Uzmada, however you say his last name. He's listed as TE1 on the depth chart. We probably know that Conklin's more reliable than CJ, but they don't know it yet. They'll probably figure it out soon. But Conklin, the surprise story of 2021 for the Vikings, who filled in commendably for Irv Smith, now plays for the Jets. Wyatt Davis didn't make the 53-man roster, was cut 1 week ago today. He quietly snuck on to the Giants practice squad, and he'll live there until somebody gives him another audition. That's also where Andre Patterson is the defensive line coach in New York. But Wyatt Davis was when you look back on this part of Vikings history, it'll be a head-scratcher because so many folks were excited about what he could be, and he should have had an audition because the right guard spot was so bad that at least you give him a look. Nope. Zimmer and the gang said, just like Kellen Mond, we don't want nothing to do with him. Everson Griffin remains a free agent, and he is 34, going to be 35, I believe. Still a daunting pass rusher. Last year when Danielle Hunter got hurt, there was a period of 3 or 4 games where Griffin was the merchant of pass rush without Hunter, because otherwise it was just the boys that couldn't really inspire a whole lot of pocket pressure. But Griffin, to me, played wonderfully last year until he had the mental health matter that he had to tend to, but now he's a free agent. So this could, and he told Chris Thomason back in February or something that he ain't retiring. So he wants to play, but evidently the phone has not rang for Mr. Griffin. I don't think he'll come back to the Vikings because he's more of a 4-3 type of commodity. Harrison Hand has a weird story. He was drafted by the Vikings in round 6 or 5, one of the two, in 2020, the pandemic draft, and was with the team up until 2 weeks ago. They cut him. He went to the New York Giants, and then they cut him on Labor Day. So Harrison Hand is a free agent, and by my estimation of the folks that I talked to, the Vikings wanted him back, and then they got swooped by the Giants. Well, we'll figure out if that theory is correct, because he's available if they want him, and they could ixnay Perry Nickerson. Chris Herndon is a free agent. He spent some of the summer, a couple weeks, with the New Orleans Saints. Surprise, surprise, didn't catch on. And his career has really flooded down the tubes. You'll recall in 2018 with a rookie with the Jets. Looked pretty good as an opening salvo. Then he got hurt. Then the Vikings panic traded for him. Didn't do anything besides score a single touchdown. Herndon is a young TE3, TE2 type free agent. Rashad Hill spent training camp with the Washington Commanders. 53-man roster shave down took place. Hill was a casualty. So now, if you need a good reservist, right tackle, left tackle, Rashad Hill is your guy. One of the biggest highlights of the summer was Sean Mannion not returning to the Vikings in any capacity. He could have been the QB2, he could have been an active QB3, or he could have sit his ass down on the practice squad. None of that happened because the Seahawks, for some godforsaken reason, said, hey, let's go back, because they had Mannion last year for a little bit. So now he lives on the Seahawks practice squad. Not our problem anymore, thank God. His competition for the summer, Kellen Mond, which look back on things, one of the biggest stories of the summer for the Vikings is Mond was not good enough to make the active roster and was totally waived. He landed with the Cleveland Browns, where he is arguably a QB3 or QB4, behind Deshaun Watson, if you consider him active, Jacoby Brissett, Joshua Dobbs, and then bada bing, you have Kellen Mond. He will attempt a career reclamation to see if he can. I don't know what his ceiling is anymore after seeing his final 2 games of his preseason. Kevin O'Connell said it wouldn't be fair to him or the Vikings to put him in a spot to play QB2, which pretty damning sentence. This guy hasn't been talked about in months, and it feels like 8 years since he's been on the team. Michael Pierce went back to the Ravens in free agency to be their starting nose tackle. So like Mason Cole, he's another dude that latched on as a starter. He returns to his roots in Baltimore. He was bittersweet with the Vikings when he played. He was marvelous, but wasn't available for the 2020 season and was hurt for a lot of last year. Sheldon Richardson is curiously a free agent. He is getting, I think he's 32. Maybe he's a little bit older. I can't remember. But he played some edge rusher last year for the Vikings, and by default, he's a defensive tackle. He would be the one guy on the list that I would expect if the Vikings wanted to get deeper, they'd give Richardson a call because he would be adaptable within the scheme, in my opinion. Alas, he's still a free agent. Amir Marcel made humongous headlines last week when the Vikings traded for Jalen Reagor, the odd man out. Amir Marcel, which was strange because a lot of folks were high on him, but now he plays for the Bears. I said on the show last week, the Bears have about 6 wide receivers that are the same guy after Darnell Mooney. Equanimeous St. Brown, Velus Jones, Byron Pringle, Tajay Sharp, just a bunch of guys like Amir Marcel that are WR2 wannabes that are probably WR3s at heart. Well, they all play for the Bears. Every single one of them on the planet, they play for the Bears. They're stockpiling these mediocre WR assets to try to find gold. I'm glad it's not our strategy. Nate Stanley, he was released in July. He was the Vikings practice squad quarterback last year. He's a free agent. Luke Stocker, 34-year-old tight end, spent 2021 with the Vikings, also a free agent. Probably the end of the road for him, unless he signs on for one more dinker stint in 2022. Chaz Surratt, a linebacker drafted in round 3 in Rick Spielman's final draft. Doesn't work here anymore. He plays for the New York Jets. He's on their practice squad. When Kwesi Adofo-Mensah completed his purge of 2021 draft classmen, Surratt was one of the odd men out. He landed in the AFC. A couple more for you. Nick Vigil, who started the season wonderfully last year for Minnesota, now plays for the Cardinals, the team he played wonderfully against last year as a member of the Vikings. He is a backup linebacker in Arizona. He should see some snaps behind Isaiah Simmons. But yeah, he fizzled. He wasn't very good after about the week 3 or 4 last year, so he was not a priority to resign. Armin Watts, one of the saddest ones on this list for me, because I thought he was trending to be a good starting defensive tackle, and in fact, had he remained on the Vikings, this was his year to prove whether or not he was a long-term starter or if last year was an outlier. Well, we'll never get to figure that out. He plays for the Bears. He's not slated to start, but who knows? For one of the first times in recent memory, the Bears defense going into a season isn't rip-roaring. It just looks pretty average. And Watts lives there as a DT2 for the moment. D.D. Westbrook, remember back in June when the Vikings entertained signing him or Albert Wilson, and they went with Albert Wilson, cut that guy 2 months later. Well, D.D. Westbrook, who I don't know if he told the Vikings no thanks or if he thought he'd find a better offer. Well, he hasn't, because he's still a free agent, a decent punt returner, decent WR4. He has signed on to nobody. And then finally, the other starter on this list, aside from Barr, Cole, who was the other one? Michael Pierce, is Xavier Woods. He was one of the splashy signings from the free agency period of 2021. He now plays for the Panthers, and he will start there. Last year, the Panthers had a pretty good defense and a shitty offense. Well, now they'll get to figure out if that defense can follow the rest of the enterprise, because Christian McCaffrey's back, and Baker Mayfield should be an improvement on Sam Darnold. So that's all 24. A couple the ones that are starting: Barr, Cole, Xavier Woods, and Michael Pierce. A bunch are free agents. A few practice squatters, and then guys right in the middle like Conklin, who's a TE2. And who was the other one? Yeah, Amir Marcel on the active roster. Who knows if he'll actually play? Like I said, at the top of the show, we'll be back with Josh Fry tomorrow to go over some of the Vikings-Packers stuff and Skol, baby.